In this session we're going to work with enrollment policies, configuration policies and substitution variables. So to get started, let's create an enrollment policy, in this case for iOS. And we've covered this in earlier sessions. So what we'll do is we'll speed through some of the actual tasks here. Let's create our enrollment code. We'll leave the defaults for general. We want our devices to automatically go into a static group that we've created here called config demo. And we want to collect some variables that we can use for substitution within a configuration policy. Now you can use exchange user or exchange ID. In this example I'm just selecting username, but I'm naming the prompt appropriately. If I want to take the exchange username, probably a good idea to take the exchange password as well. And you can see that's masked. Okay, let's save that. So now we have an enrollment policy that's going to collect some variables. We probably need a configuration policy that's going to be able to make use of those variables. So let's go into New, Configuration, iOS. Give it a name. Again, let's use that good practice on the naming structure. Also be aware of the priority here. The lower the number, the higher the priority. This just helps a device if there's multiple configuration policies that maybe need to be applied. So it helps with prioritization. And you can see under configuration policy, we've got several options here we can set for iOS. We're going to look at Exchange Active Sync to ensure the end users get their email. I'm just changing the name to corporate here. Now some variables can be substituted, some don't need to. So I'm just going to use an example here, webmail. I'm going to turn off the allow move option. That provides an added level of security, stops a user from moving corporate email into their personal, perhaps Gmail or Hotmail accounts. So you can see how we're going to use substitution now. So I've got many different variables that I can use. And since I used username in my enrollment policy, I'm going to select that. So whatever the user enters during enrollment will then be substituted. And I want to configure the email address as well. And I just know in my example that it's going to be username@ca.com. And of course the password. So I'm going to use the exchange password variable. Okay, so that's corporate email configured for the device, specifically exchange. Let's just walk through some of the other options we got here. So you see we click on passcode, then we have to click add. Now passcode's one of the key issues around securing a device, of course. And you can make this easy or more complicated by using a simple password or longer. We're not going to set one at this time. Let's move down to restriction. And this basically gives you access to the device APIs. So this is the restriction side or functionality that you see on your iOS device. So let's turn off the use of the camera, because that would be quite a visual thing to see be removed from the device when we apply this policy. And let's remove iCloud backup, because it's not a secure repository for corporate data. I can set VPN, calendars and so forth. Web clip's another interesting one. A web clip will create basically an app icon on the device, which is a shortcut to a web page. So it could be used for training, education, or it could be, in this case, I'm going to create one for the self-service portal. I'm going to browse to select an icon that will be used for this web clip on the device. Of course, this can be anything you wish. Just ensure that the resolution's correct. The solution allows you to upload JPEGs and so forth. You can have multiple web clips, and if you had already configured them, using the arrows here would allow you to navigate through those. We've only got one, so we're just going to add a second. In this case, we're going to put a link to the ca.com website. So the label you can see is www.ca.com, but we need to put the full URL. Save that. You notice that pressing save completes the configuration, so perform your configuration options before you ultimately press save, but of course you can always go back in. And what's the key thing we've learned? If you create a policy of any type, you have to link it. So in this case I'm going to link it to this config demo group, which I previously had linked my enrollment code or enrollment policy to. So that's iOS. What we're going to look at now is the options available for an Android configuration policy. Okay, so the first screen looks pretty similar. Priority, put the name in there. You see the option there to collect inventory, enabled or not. In this case I want to enable it, and I want to be able to collect software and hardware. And then what we'll do is we'll walk through some of the pull downs here. So under schedule, this is if we want to make basically force periodic connection. And we've got some generic Android properties. So do we want to set a password, numeric password, 4 characters, so forth. And also can we disable the camera. Notice this is Android 4.x and above. But also notice this section is generic. So this should be applicable for any type of Android device. Here we can configure if we have a relay server. But also look, we have LG, Motorola and Samsung. Samsung has advanced enterprise security components built into its operating system, and we saw that when we pulled down the Samsung additional management APIs. So here we can configure access to Android Market, location policy and so forth. So basically you can take away from here that we can, from a Samsung perspective, allows us to set many more attributes. And if we browse through looking at LG, we have a fair amount of additional policy items we can set there. We could do the same for the other manufacturers. Okay, let's save that. And remember, we always have to link a policy to our groups. Now we're going to look at a device and see how it's affected. So here we have an iOS device. We can see 2 pages of apps, got my camera. And what I'm going to do is select the CA MDM app, enter my enrollment code, press OK. And here's the variables that we asked for, exchange ID and exchange password. I'm just going to use dummy credentials here. Now we've seen the enrollment process before, but we're just going to walk through it again. I enter the device's passcode that was already in place and confirm management of this device by our MDM server. You can see that's pretty quick. So we can see we've got the same pages that we had, the camera and FaceTime, which obviously relies on camera, as well as photo booth. They're still there, although remember we set that they would be removed or disabled. And there you go, they're disabled by the configuration policy. And there's our ca.com web clip, you may recall, and our self-service web clip. So let's just test that. Let's click on the ca.com web clip, see where it takes us. very appropriately, to the CA Mobile Device Management webpage.